Well, good evening and welcome to another exciting episode of Love Not Fear. I'm Jack Cox, author of Love Not Fear. And one of the
And
other.
this is Jack's book, and it's wonderful.
It is.
Thank you, Andrew.
There you go.
And with my gorgeous co-host Annie Day, who's written 2 scrumptious books.
Orgasmic Health and Your Guide to Feeling Fabulous Fast.
And we all need to feel fabulous fast.
We so do, Jack. We so do.
So tonight, Annie's going to be very, very brave and tell us about her personal account of escaping an abusive relationship.
Yes.
Most of us have been in one or more abusive relationships, physically or emotionally, at one time or another.
Yeah.
It's almost inevitable.
Yeah.
Living in this world, on this planet, it's hard. It's tough. It's difficult.
Yeah.
It's stressful.
Yeah.
And it induces trauma in a lot of people.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Hurt people.
Yeah.
And traumatized people.
And heal people.
And that's why we're here today.
Ta-da! Are you ready to do it now, Jack? All you need is love.
Love is all you need.
All you need is love.
Love is
All you need is love.
Love.
Love is all you need. Oh, a trio tonight. Woohoo!
We'll never win any singing competitions, will we?
No, but it's all from the heart, so it's all good.
Yeah, we do tend to hurt the ones we love, even if we don't mean to. And we tend to stick by the people we love, even if they're hurting us.
Yeah.
Far longer than we probably ought to for our own well-being.
Yeah, sure, Jack.
Because we love them.
Yeah.
We think we can help them. And sometimes we can, and sometimes we can't.
Yeah.
But we try.
Exactly.
We try. We try right up until the very last moment.
Yeah.
And eventually we have to wise up and cut our losses.
Yeah, absolutely, darling. And I think part of that is learning to love ourselves and putting our own oxygen mask on first, Jack.
Absolutely. Yeah. But it's important to realize that the people who are traumatizing us are victims too. So this isn't a finger pointing game.
No, we discussed this the other day. It's nothing like that. I just wanted to empower and inspire people and maybe give people some ideas if they are in an abusive relationship, how to get out safely.
I think that's brilliant, Annie. We're really, really looking forward to hearing that from you.
Thank you.
But let's look at some of the terms before we get stuck into Annie's account.
Yeah.
Some of the words we're going to be using. But it's very important here when classifying the different types of abusers that we're not judging them or playing the holier than thou game. We all have our faults and none of us are perfect.
Yeah.
We're all a work in progress.
Indeed.
So let's start by comparing 2 words that I'm sure you're familiar with, psychopath and sociopath.
Yeah.
Here are 5 ways to tell sociopaths and psychopaths. Both conditions are covered by the blanket term antisocial personality disorder.
Yeah.
ASPD.
Oh, I didn't know we got letters for it.
Now I got letters for it, yeah. ASPD. Sounds like some American police force, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it?
The condition is characterized by a lack of empathy and disregard towards social norms. Generally, people with ASPD will exhibit disregard for the feelings of others, disregard for the laws and the rules, no remorse after hurting others, aggression, and dangerous behavior.
Yeah.
The differences lie in how these symptoms are portrayed. Some sociologists argue that psychopaths are a more severe psychopathy is a more severe condition,
And sociopaths, yeah, for sure.
It's a more severe form of ASPD.
Yeah.
Well, others think it's something completely different. They don't necessarily agree. Sociopaths don't care about others, while psychopaths pretend that they care.
And there's the rub. There's the rub.
There's the rub. Sociopaths tend to make it clear that they don't care about the needs of others. Because of this, they may have extremely unstable and abusive relationships. And we've all known one or two of them. Psychopaths, on the other hand, can be much more difficult to spot.
Yeah.
They tend to blend in well with the people around them and configure their emotions to avoid drawing attention to their condition.
Until the doors are closed.
Yeah. Because of this, psychopaths may appear completely normal. Sometimes, so much so that they have long-lasting, happy relationships, and their families remain unaware of their condition. But sociopaths are impulsive, while psychopaths tend to be methodical. Generally, they may have a difficult time controlling their emotions, and they lash out with explosive outbursts.
Yeah.
Very suddenly.
Yeah.
They may even carry out violent acts and even crimes.
It's the unexpectedness of it, because because they do look, as you've just said, like they're blending in and they do care. So when the violence or the abuse happens, I think it's a double whammy for us, Jack, because we didn't see any hint that it was coming, basically.
Yeah, I think your husband was a sociopath, not a psychopath.
Well, Victor Wrong said he was a psychopath, and I'm happy to go with that, as he worked with both of us. But
psychopaths are able to hide it, whereas sociopaths aren't.
Yeah.
Sociologists believe that sociopaths are generally products of their environment. In other words, their trauma, whereas psychopaths are born that way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's look at another term, narcissist.
Yeah.
We may think of narcissists as wanting to take pictures of themselves or bragging about something they've done. But there's a lot more.
That's not a real narcissist, though, is it?
But there's a lot more to it than that.
Mm.
Narcissists don't feel any empathy for others and see everything in life as a way of getting their own needs met.
Sure.
There's a difference between a psychopath and a narcissist, by and large. A narcissist will usually feel at least a little remorse about doing the bad things they do, especially if they've hurt the people close to them. When they do bad things, when they hurt members of their family, they're usually sorry. Although they may not care about other victims that are less close to them. We could base the rest of this on the works of Dr. Romani in America, who has identified 4 different types of narcissist.
Yeah.
The grandiose narcissist.
It made it sound quite scrumptious.
Always impeccably dressed. Very egotistical, arrogant, attention seeking, and validation seeking. Look at me, I'm so great. Don't I have a beautiful house? They never stop to listen to anybody or connect with anybody on a deep level.
Yeah.
Far more problematic is the second type, the malignant narcissist.
Yeah.
This is the person who is all the things that the grandiose narcissist is, but totally lacking empathy, entitled, grandiose, big and pompous, and they're really mean.
Oh, yeah. Upstanding pillar of the society.
They will do really bad things, a bit like psychopaths.
Psychopaths, aren't they? Yeah, yeah.
Well, they're a bit like psychopaths. They do bad things with little or no remorse.
Yeah.
They may steal. They may cheat their partners. Yeah, that kind of thing. And they make great criminals.
Oh, fantastic. What a great skill.
Yeah.
There's a blessing in everything.
If you want to start a criminal gang, find a couple of
Find yourself.
find yourself a couple of malignant narcissists and you're halfway there.
I shall give that due consideration, Jack.
No, there's the third kind, the covert narcissists.
There we go.
Covert as in secret.
Yeah.
A covert narcissist is someone who feels put upon by the world.
It's everybody else's fault.
Yeah.
It's the one.
They're still grandiose. They still say things like, I'm a really great writer, but the world never acknowledges my achievements and my greatness. I'm just ahead of my time. Woe is me, woe is me. Why can't people see how great I am? I do so many great things for the world.
That'll be the one.
They never take responsibility for their own actions and their own mistakes.
Exactly
They always blaming others.
Yeah.
Or blaming the world. They often feel like the world's done them wrong, life's done them wrong. Woe is me, woe is me.
By not taking responsibility for their own part in this means that they rarely heal. They don't develop and grow as most of us do because they simply cannot acknowledge that this is all going on inside them. They are responsible for their anger. They are responsible for their sadness, not anybody externally.
You can't even begin to heal until you take 100% responsibility
and
for
go,
your own.
This is my story and I'm going to sort it out. That's what we've got to do, isn't it?
Yeah. So they can be quite passive aggressive. They're often depressed.
Oh, yeah.
Often depressed. Some of them will even get treated for depression.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't respond to treatment, as Annie's just said.
Yeah.
Because
they don't take part in their own healing. They don't put the hands of the steering wheel of their own life because it's everybody else's fault.
Yeah. They just feel that the world never understood their greatness.
Yeah.
So how can you tell if your friends have genuine low confidence or if they're covert narcissists?
Yeah, yeah.
Look at how much of a victim they feel and whether they are taking responsibility for their shortcomings.
Exactly that, Jack. Exactly that.
A covert narcissist will never say, I know I didn't do a very good job. I could have done better. I will learn and do better next time. You'll never hear that from a covert narcissist.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not, Jack.
And then number 4, we have the communal narcissist.
Say that again.
communal,
Oh, communal. All
as,
right.
as in community.
Okay.
The person who is always blowing his own trumpet, he or she is all over social media, bragging about all the good deeds they've done, how he helped a homeless person today, how it's Dog Rescue Thursday. That kind of thing. That kind of thing. They're always out there trying to save the world, but not genuinely.
No.
Only when
It's
people are
the
watching.
ingenuineness of them that is the most difficult, because we, you know, and I know, Jack, we're ultra sensitive empaths, and we can spot bullshit 5 million miles away, can't we? So when someone says, I don't know, a compliment or says something, we're going, actually, that's not genuine, is it?
I mean, you and I, Annie, not trying to blow our own trumpets here. But
Why
you
not? Why
you
not?
you and I trying to change the world because the world is changing.
Yeah.
Not asking anybody to give us any recognition for it.
No.
We're
We're
not
just
saying,
doing it
hey,
because it's the right thing to do.
we do the right thing to do even when nobody is looking.
Exactly that. Exactly that, Jack.
And these communal narcissists, they don't.
No.
They only want the attention.
Yeah.
Look at me, see how good I am. Now, of course, there is some overlap between these different groups.
Yes, of course.
Everyone is different and unique, but this will give you some idea of the traits to look out for.
Yeah.
Now, over to Annie, who will share her personal experience.
And first, before I did that, I wanted to just talk about the different categories that there are, because it's often presumed that there's only physical violence or there's only mental violence, and there isn't. There's a whole raft of different ones. So
Yes. Right.
we define domestic abuse as an incident or pattern of incidents of controlling, coercive, threatening, degrading, and violent behaviour, including sexual violence, and in the majority of cases by a partner or ex-partner. Also, this can be by a family member or a carer. So I wanted to include this as comprehensively as possible.
No, that's good,
yeah, it's sadly very common. In the vast majority of cases, it is experienced by women and is perpetrated by men. And I will talk more about the fact that it happens to men as well.
It can happen both ways, absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I was, sadly, I observed my mother abusing my father on a regular basis. So I know that, and also from my personal and professional experience, that it does happen to men as well. Again, most domestic abuse is underreported by women, but also by men especially.
Men are less likely to suffer physical abuse.
Yeah.
Equally as likely to suffer emotional abuse.
Yeah, exactly.
I was in an emotionally abusive relationship for 6 years, so I know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I'm sad to hear that for you, lovely Jack.
Carry on.
Okay, so domestic abuse can include, but is not limited to, the following: coercive control, a pattern of intimidation, degradation, isolation, and control with the use of threats or physical or sexual violence. And although we're not really talking about our government, isn't that what they've been doing?
Absolutely, yeah.
That's definitely coercive control, Jack. And I know, you know, it was, you know, going on worldwide, but again, it is coercive control.
Yeah.
And then psychological and or emotional abuse, I've discovered from a personal level, but also I worked in a women's refuge for 5 years as a children's worker, that often psychological and emotional abuse are in bed together, basically.
Yeah.
It's a rarity that you're only being mentally abused or you're only being emotionally abused. Usually it's both of those. Financial or economic abuse. harassment and stalking. Again, sadly, this happens to women far more frequently than it does men. I'd like it to not happen at all, but again, it happens really frequently. And then online or digital abuse, which sadly, there's lots of bullying on, let's say, Facebook for, teenagers, all sorts of horrible things. So I wanted to include the whole, the whole comprehensive range of what abuse might look like. This is from the Women's Aid website. Domestic abuse is a gendered crime which is deeply rooted in the societal inequality between men and women. In view of what we talked about last week, lovely Jack, I think they've got a point. It is a form of gender-based violence, directed against a woman because she's a woman, or that affects disproportionately. And that was Seedor's research in 1992.
That's certainly true of physical abuse, the violence.
Yeah, but also when men are in same-sex relationships, quite often they're subjected to physical violence by their partner. So although it does in the main happen men to women, it could also happen in the same-sex relationship as well.
Could do, yeah.
Women are more likely than men to experience multiple incidents of abuse, different types of domestic abuse, an intimate partner violence, sexual assault and stalking, and in particular, sexual violence. Any woman can experience domestic abuse regardless of race, ethnic or religious group, sexuality, class or disability. But some women who experience other forms of oppression and discrimination may face further barriers to disclosing this abuse and finding help. Domestic abuse exists as part of violence against women and girls, which also includes different forms of family violence, such as forced marriage, female genital mutilation, and so-called honour crimes. I know, Jack, but I thought I needed to say it because for Asian families and African families, sadly, this is what they're dealing with, as well as all the other forms of abuse as well.
Absolutely. Female genital mutilation. How long has that been?
Oh my God, it makes me feel.
How long has that been illegal in this country? And how many cases have ever been brought to court? Hardly any.
Yeah, it's not being addressed at all, is it really? It's really not being looked at. Some key statistics. The majority of domestic homicide victims killed by an ex or their current partner or a family member for the year ending March 2017 to the year ending March 2019 were females, 77%. So it was 274 women who were murdered by their partners. Most of the suspects were male. So it was 263 out of 274.
How many men were murdered by their partners? Do you have the figures?
Of the 83 male victims of domestic homicide, the suspect was female in 39 cases and male in 44 cases. Again, they go on to describe how it's fairly, as sad as I am to say this, it is more prevalent in same-sex relationships that's the case. So this was ONS in 2020 that the statistics came from. Over the 3-year period, April 2016 to March 2019, a total of 222 women were killed by a partner or ex-partner. This means that during this time period, an average of 3 women every fortnight were murdered by their male partner or ex-partner. Again, that was ONS 2020. Sadly, we probably know this already, Jack, as does Andrew. This figure massively escalated during the forced lockdowns of
Oh,
March
yes.
2020 and 2021, according to the ONS at the end of 2021.
I mean, who the hell had thought that it was going to be okay to lock people who are in an abusive relationship in with one another 24/7? Who the hell thought that was a good idea? It's absolutely crazy.
And although the police and support workers were flagging it up, didn't make a scrap of difference. And at the beginning of the lockdown, I had a young lady living with me for about 3 weeks with her 6-month-old baby and her 9-year-old son, because it was the only place that he wouldn't know where she was, but also that we could keep a roof over their heads. So I'm pleased that she knew to come to me, but I am so sad that she could have been one of those statistics, Jack.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It's awful. You know,
It
if we
doesn't
were
matter.
having a plane crash and 218 people or 222 people died, there'd be a huge outcry about it, because this happens all over the country, and domestic abuse is hidden quite often because the people who are doing it are the police. The worst, what shall I say, the worst professions for high cases of domestic abuse is the army, RAF, and policemen. They are the perpetrators, far higher than any other trade, basically.
I must just stick in here, though, that we were talking about underreporting earlier. Men are far more reluctant to report.
Exactly that, Jack. Exactly that.
No man wants to admit that he's been beaten by his wife.
No.
It's such a terrible thing to admit.
Yeah. And also, quite often, the female perpetrator is smaller than him. So men have said to me, well, I haven't told anybody about it, because who's going to believe that a 4'8" woman has battered a 6-foot man?
Not only that, but it makes a man look such a wimp. He's never going to admit to it.
No. And also, there are Women's Aid Federation, thankfully, refuges for emergency cases all over the UK, but there is only 2 male refuges, one in Scotland and one in London.
It's not enough.
And again, they will close down, not just due to lack of funding, but they will close down because it's underused. But there is such a need for it, Jack. There's such a need for it. One study of 96 cases of domestic abuse recorded by the police found that men are significantly more likely to be repeat perpetrators and significantly more likely than women to use physical violence, threats and harassment. In a 6-year tracking period, the majority of recorded male perpetrators, who were 83%, had at least 2 other incidents of recorded abuse, with many having a lot more than 2, and one man having 52 repeat incidents. Whereas in cases where women were recorded as the perpetrator, the majority, 62%, had only 1 incident of abuse recorded, and the highest number of repeat incidents for any female perpetrator was 8. This study also found that men's violence tended to create a context of fear and control, which was not necessarily the case when women were the perpetrators, and that was Hester's research in 2013.
Yeah. Let me just say also, I don't really want to open up too much about my own. I'm not as brave as you, Annie.
I think you are, Jack. Let me do this for a start.
But I will just say that if the police are called, they will tend to side with the woman.
Yes, I'm sure.
There was one incident when the lady involved, happened in Spain, came at me with a kitchen knife. He tried to stab me with a kitchen knife.
Oh, Jack.
And I just took it off her, you know, I mean, as I do. I mean, as you do. I mean, I've been trained in self-defense. I just took it off her. But in taking it off her, she had some bruises on her wrist. The police were called, saw the bruises on her wrist, and I was sitting in the back of a police car with handcuffs on.
Oh, Jack.
Yeah, and I was the one that was being
Because
attacked.
they have that perception that it's only women to men, and it's not. It's the, I mean, no, it's only men to women, and they don't take into account, despite all the free training that they get on domestic abuse so that they can help people, the police rarely take it up, even
Yeah.
when it's free training, Jack.
Yeah, I know.
I'm really sorry that happened to you, lovely Jack.
been-
You're right.
Yeah, I'm sorry the stuff happened to you that happened to you. But I will just say that it's made us stronger. It's made us who we are
Oh,
today.
it's made me exactly the amazing goddess that I am, and it's made you the amazing god that you are.
I wouldn't
Without
undo.
that, we wouldn't be the extraordinary people that we are, Jack. I really
I wouldn't
believe that.
undo any. I wouldn't undo any of the shit that's happened
No,
to me
nor me.
because it's made me who I am today.
Yes.
I say I've said this before on the show that I'm grateful for all the people who've given me my most difficult, painful experiences
Yeah.
because they've made me who I am today.
Yeah. Same here. So types of physical abuse could be assault, hitting, slapping, punching, kicking, hair pulling, biting, pushing, rough handling, scalding and burning, physical punishments, inappropriate or unlawful use of restraints, making someone purposely uncomfortable, opening a window, removing blankets. And again, that would be more in care homes, Jack. But again, sadly, there is quite a lot of that goes on.
There is, yeah. You think the people when you go into a care as a
Would
profession
only be there because they loved it.
would be caring people,
Yeah.
but so many of them turn into abuse. Whether it's the job that turns them that way, I don't know. But so no blame, no
Sweet.
blame, no finger pointing. But they do become abusive.
Yeah.
Many of them do.
So involuntary isolation or confinement, misuse of medication, e.g. over-sedation. So knocking you out so that they can do whatever they want to do to you. Forcible feeding or withholding food. Unauthorized restraints restricting your movements, for example, tying someone to a chair. Types of sexual abuse include rape, attempted rape or sexual assault, inappropriate touch anywhere, non-consensual masturbation of either or both persons, non-consensual sexual penetration or attempted penetration of the vagina, anus or mouth. Any sexual activity that the person lacks that capacity to consent to. Inappropriate looking, sexual teasing or innuendos or sexual harassment. Sexual photography, forced use of pornography or witnessing of sexual acts and indecent exposure. Types of psychological or emotional abuse. Enforced social isolation. So whether it's a male or a female, they will try to make sure that you are isolated away from any form of help, advice, or, you know, someone to take care of you, basically. Preventing someone from accessing services, educational, social opportunities, and or seeing friends. Removing mobility or communication aids or intentionally leaving someone unattended when they needed assistance. Preventing the expression of choice or opinion. So if you know you're going to be in trouble if you don't have the same, let's say, political viewpoint as your partner, you'll end up just going with the flow and not speaking your truth, basically. Failure to respect privacy. Again, this is a huge one for all of us. Preventing a stimulation, meaningful occupation or activities. Intimidation, coercion, harassment, use of threat, humiliation, bullying, swearing or verbal abuse. Dressing a person in a patronising or infanticising way, threats of harm or abandonment, and cyberbullying. So one of the things I will talk about is that I was told constantly that I was fat. I was told that certain parts of my body were not attractive. And because it was drip fed over many years, I started to believe it, Jack.
You do. Years and years of being told lies about yourself, about you.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the lady I'm talking about just used to put me down constantly.
Yeah.
She never had a good word to say. She always had to say something nasty or something mean.
Yeah.
And over the years,
It does have an effect, Jack, because it's that,
it does.
that even that drop of water, if you do it every single day, will have a negative impact, won't it?
Yeah. I'll tell you a little bit about it. I put up with it for 3 years.
Okay.
And then I walked out.
Good man. Good man.
Uh,
Put your own oxygen mask on first.
And then she had a very, very nasty accident. And the doctor said that she could go home if there was someone to look after her.
Oh,
So
Jack.
like
And
an
your
idiot,
big heart.
like an idiot, I said, I'll look after her. So I moved back in. I looked after her for another 3 years.
Oh, Jack.
And the first year was fine because she was dependent
Incapacitated.
and grateful to me. And then it all started up again. So.
Oh, darling. But I think we should never judge ourselves for being big-hearted and compassionate and empathic with people, even when they didn't deserve it, because that's who we are, Jack. That's who we are, isn't it?
Yeah. I was there patching this big hole in her back every day, changing the dressings. Anyway, let's move on. Well, again, I've said.
Okay. Well, I suspect I may do the same, Jack. When I read my what I wrote as a blog 7.5 years ago, I did cry, and but I want to tell the rest of my story because the last 8 years has been magical and wonderful and scrummy.
Absolutely,
hasn't
I
it?
mean, we've both rebuilt our lives, haven't we?
Yeah, we're thriving, not just surviving, Jack Cox. We're doing so much better than that, aren't we? So types of financial or material abuse: theft of your money or possessions, fraud, scamming, preventing a person from accessing their own money, benefits or assets, employees taking a loan from a person that is using the service. Big no-no.
Yeah.
Undue pressure, duress, threats or undue influence put on a person in connection with loans, wills, property, inheritance or financial transactions. Arranging less care than is needed to save money to maximise their inheritance.
Yeah.
And sadly, Jack, I've heard this story quite a few times. It's just horrible. It's just horrible. Denying assistance to manage or monitor their own financial affairs. Denying assistance to access benefits. Misuse of personal allowance in a care home. Misuse of benefits or direct payments in a family home. Someone moving into a person's home and living rent-free without agreement or under duress, apart from your teenage kids, of course. There's the one exception, isn't there?
Oh, yeah.
Misuse of power of attorney, deputy, appointeeship, or other legal authority. And then I looked at types of modern slavery, because there is a link with all of this, Jack, isn't there?
There is, yeah.
So human trafficking, forced labour, domestic servitude, sexual exploitation such as escort work, prostitution and pornography, debt bondage, which again, I've heard of this so many times, Jack.
Yeah.
Being forced to work to pay off debts that realistically they will never be able to do. It's just horrible, isn't it?
It is, happens a lot.
Types of organisation or institutional abuse. Now, this is very relevant for what we've been going through in the last 3 years, I think. Discouraging visit or the involvement of relatives or friends. What did they stop us doing again?
What did they stop us doing? We couldn't go and see Grandma, could we?
Yeah, couldn't go and see our families.
Couldn't go and hold Grandma when she died.
Exactly. Oh,
I mean, that was wicked. That was
heartbreaking.
wicked.
It was wicked, really wicked.
While they were having a piss up in number 10.
Oh yeah, when that came out, people were saying, how could they break the rules? And I said, because they knew there was no threat. There was no need for them to do social distance or masks. They were only telling us that bullshit so that we'd be compliant.
Yeah.
And I'm really sad that so many people weren't allowed to be with their loved one when they passed over. That was just the most horrible, horrible thing.
Although we're going off
The person
topic.
who couldn't go in, as well as for the person who was left to die alone when, you know, they were expecting, they'd always said, you know, I want you to hold my hand when I pass over, to their daughter or sons or whatever. That wasn't happening, basically, was it, darling?
Yeah. I know it's off topic a little bit, but I just stick in here that it's the same with the climate change con.
Oh, absolutely. What a load of bollocks.
The people that are pushing it are flying around in private jets.
Exactly, to go to the G8 summit. But we have to pay 10p for a plastic bag because that's going to make all the difference. What a load of...
Yeah.
Our beautiful Earth resets herself all the time. This is not the first time, is it?
Yeah. Anyway, back to the subject in hand.
Back to the story.
Annie, can we actually, Annie, can we just speed up the theory a little bit because we want to get to your...
Of course we can. Yeah. Authoritarian management or rigid regimes, lack of leadership and supervision, abusive and disrespectful attitudes towards people, inappropriate use of restraints, then neglects and acts of omission, because that is part of it too. Failure to provide or allow access to food, shelter, clothing, heating, stimulation, activity, personal or medical care. Providing care in a way that the person dislikes. Failure to administer medication as prescribed. Refusal of access to visitors. Not taking account of individuals' cultural, religious or ethnic needs. Ignoring or isolating the person. Again, we've had a fair bit of that in the last 3 years. Preventing the person from making their own decisions. Preventing access to glasses, hearing aids, etc. So the lovely Victor Wrong, 7.5 years ago, said, I would like you to write a blog on this exceptional time of your life, because I've observed you and this is a really inspirational and empowering story. So from January 2015 until the weekend of September the 18th, I was planning and preparing to leave a relationship of many decades that sadly was neither loving nor respectful. I was aided in my escape by many friends who offered their love, support and practical assistance, which enabled me to escape safely to a new home in Stafford. So bear in mind, I had been living in Penkridge. So this is what I wrote at the time.
So for those who aren't, for those who don't come from this area, Penkridge is about what, 10 miles south of Stafford?
Yeah.
15 miles, something like that.
But that's where I'd lived for a very long period of time.
Yeah.
But obviously this is what I wrote 7.5 years ago, which obviously now there is more beauty to add to it. Due to this pivotal life-changing experience, I have discovered that I am brave, courageous, resourceful, compassionate, empathic, and far more capable and accomplished than I could ever have imagined. The background and gaslighting. My leaving my husband was a shock to many people as I was making the best of the situation I was in. I covered up and hid what was domestic abuse and gaslighting. Many saw my husband taking me and collecting me from all the venues that I needed to visit as part of my work. Most people saw this as an act of generosity and kindness, whereas what I've come to realise is that it was simply more manipulation, more control, and his jealousy that was firing up this behaviour. He was in fact simply checking up on where I was and who I was with at every point of the day. He would call me incessantly throughout the day, and I would have to explain what I'd been doing and why I hadn't picked up his call. Again, on the surface of this behaviour, it would seem that he was just being kind and considerate and checking up on me. This was controlling, manipulative, and I have lately discovered that this was a technique called gaslighting. Over the years, there has been extreme violence. I tried to leave twice, once when my children were 2 and 3, and once when they were 3 and 5. Unsuccessfully, as we were caught as we were leaving, and the repercussions of this were dreadful. There were so many occasions when he would shout at me, put me down privately and publicly, but usually privately. If I dared to challenge him about this behaviour later, he would tell me that I was mad. He would tell me I was making it up and that he hadn't said that, he hadn't done that, he hadn't pushed me, I was just clumsy. Whenever we were alone, I was living literally with the enemy. His behaviour, his demeanour and his language would be kind and loving whenever there was an audience. By the time I was leaving, his behaviour was intolerable. Over the years, the most contentious times for me to be alone with him were evenings, weekends and holidays. It got to the point that I dreaded evenings and weekends so much as his behaviour would be so aggressive and controlling. As a coping mechanism, I started asking some of my patients to reschedule from weekdays to either evenings or weekends, as whenever there was an audience, he would be well behaved, kind and well mannered. On many occasions, he would have been shouting obscenities at me and accusing me of the most dreadful behaviours. Someone would walk in and he would change in a millisecond to his public, lovely face. He refused to have treatments for many years to address his anger that was really, sadly, about a lack of self-love. And when he did eventually agree and arrange to have treatments, he refused to talk to the therapist. This meant that it was almost impossible to help and support him. The final straw for me was to discover that he hadn't been having regular treatments and that the reason that many therapists had literally sacked him as a patient was that he was unwilling to let go of the past, move forward and to start healing instead of blaming me.
Exactly what we were saying earlier, isn't it?
Exactly that, Jack. That so resonated with me.
If they don't take responsibility for themselves, if they try to blame it on you,
They're never going to get better, are they?
they're never going to heal. They're never
No.
going to heal.
No. My escape was planned and executed like an SAS operation, because I'd learned from the 2 occasions, Jack, when I tried to leave, that I needed to be much better prepared than that. With every single aspect of my future life being planned for over 12 months and prepared, so that on the day that I had chosen to leave while he was away on camp, because I knew then that was the only time that he would be away for a whole weekend. So everything was in place so that by 10:30 on the Friday night, everything was packed up that belonged to Heaven Sent Bliss or to myself. I am more grateful than words can express to all the amazing people and wonderful friends who stored things for me, who turned up on the night to help me pack up my life and get ready for my bright future. I had lived at our Penkridge address since 1984, and although this was a wrench, it had also become a war zone for me. On the Saturday morning, the man with the van came and took away my furniture to my new home, along with my amazing supporters who literally unpacked me, so that by Sunday afternoon, everything was unpacked and I had a working practice again. New place. My flat in Corporation Street is rented from the amazing Mandy Hunt and Louis Toth, who are brother and sister known as Mandolin Properties. They have been the most supportive, kind angels that I could have ever have wished for. They gave me safe parking inside their beautiful garden centre, and I lived in my little flat that I loved for just over 6 months. At this point, Mandy and Louis told me that they had a house that would shortly be available for rental. So this is my new home at 3 Priory Gardens. I cannot tell you how happy I am to be living in such an exquisitely beautiful setting. I'm literally surrounded by beautiful stoneware, wonderful trees, superb plants and shrubs, and my home is a haven of tranquility, peace and beauty. I appreciate that this was a huge shock for some of my closest family and friends, as I had done such a very good job of hiding the reality of our relationship from the public eye. This was partly that I was for many years unable to acknowledge what was really happening. I wanted the fairy tale ending to our marriage. I wanted to believe that things would get better. I wanted to believe that the vows I had made to stay with him as his wife until death do us part, I would be able to do. That this became an impossible dream was not due to a lack of effort, creative thinking, and many different strategies to heal our relationship on my part. The change in my behaviour and attitude came about primarily because I learned to love myself unconditionally. I learned to take charge of my own destiny. I learned to love the amazing person that I really am, and to say, finally, I have tried my very best in this marriage, but enough is enough. For the last 12 months before I departed, it was necessary for me to grieve and mourn for the loss of my marriage whilst I was still in it. It was important for me to honour our 2 children, which were a product of this marriage, and I could not be more proud of them and the men they have become. I had spent so many nights crying because I could no longer pretend. I eventually moved into my treatment room so that at least I could then have a good night's sleep as his snoring became worse and worse. It was with the greatest sadness that I typed up the letter that I would leave for him on the Saturday morning, explaining why at this point in my life I could no longer sustain a marriage that was so lacking in love and respect. I thought long and hard about the impact that this would have on him. I chose to be as compassionate, kind, and loving as possible through not only the preparations to leave, but since in the way that I've handled the divorce. I regret nothing that has happened in my life, not even all the heartbreak, the gut-wrenching, frightening, many times traumatic events that took place within this marriage, as I fully appreciate that without all of these experiences, I would not be the incredible woman I am today. I have also cried hot, salty tears for all the good things that happened in our marriage, for all the joy and pleasure that our marriage once used to bring to me. I have appreciated from the bottom of my heart my family, friends, colleagues, for their support, love, practical solutions, and for always making me laugh and look on the bright side of life. Choose joy. It is in these pivotal, life-changing moments in life that we come to realise how extraordinarily gifted we are. My life is richer, my future brighter, and my self-esteem higher than it has ever been in any point of my life previously. So to many women and men who read this and who are in a similar situation, I will lend you my advice, which may help you in the future. Learn to love yourself unconditionally. Look in the mirror every single day. Look deep into your eyes, the windows to your soul, and say sincerely, I love you. I really love you. Over and over again until you believe it within every cell of your extraordinary body and mind. My future is bright, secure, and happy, and I am really looking forward to all the fun, pleasure, love, and laughter that the universe has to offer. If you would like to speak to me about anything that I have disclosed within this blog, then please do call me.
Thank you, Annie.
And what I wanted to say, Jack, is it didn't stop there. You've already seen my lovely Merfairy Palace and my beautiful garden that I couldn't have created if I'd have stayed where I was. So I'm very proud of myself, Jack, for choosing me.
I'm very proud of you too, Annie. And I'm very proud of the way that you've battled through that tonight, even though you were in tears. I've got so much respect for you for that.
Thank you. So I've discovered, again, because I was a children's worker in a women's refuge, that quite often men and women who were neglected or abused as children are more, what shall I say, vulnerable to abuse as adults. It's kind of sad as it is. I think it sets up a bit of a pattern that we're on hyper alert all the time, and we're looking for when their eyes change or when their energy change, so we know when to run to keep ourselves safe. And I wish it wasn't like that, but sadly it is. So
according to Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, we become addicted to the chemicals in our bloodstream, the chemicals of stress and abandonment and the bleakness. And so we try to recreate it later on in life because we're addicted to those chemicals.
Well, that's an interesting viewpoint, isn't it?
Mm.
So according to Robinson 2022, it says often men and women who are abused as children or were neglected, this childhood trauma sets up the pattern for them to become more vulnerable as adults, which is what Jodie Spencer's saying as well. I also want to say that I am perfectly aware that this was a soulmate contract. And if he hadn't have done everything that he did, then he wouldn't have been honouring our soulmate contract, which he did. And so did I. And without me making the decision to take care of myself and to create a life I love to look at now, if I hadn't have done that, then he wouldn't have made, well, he would have never have met his current wife, and he wouldn't have made as much progress as he has. My leaving was, although it sounds unlikely, my leaving was beneficial to both of us.
Annie, who else could you ask? You want to come here and learn the hardest lessons. Who could you ask to help facilitate that for you? But your closest friend in spirit.
Yeah.
As you say, a soulmate.
So what was really significant about, I went to the All About Love Festival.
Yeah.
Was on the one morning, I got this massive download that I was shown that for all of my life since I was a little girl, I've been trying to prove that I'm a good person. And I already was.
Yeah, I know.
All of my life, I've been trying to ensure that people think that I'm a good person, and I already was. I didn't need to do anything at all. And then repeatedly, the fairies kept saying to me over and over again, you need to say this to yourself repeatedly. I am enough. 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 And Jack, it's been so good for me. And I'm massively grateful to you, Jack, for giving me this opportunity to talk about it.
Well, I'm massively grateful to you, Annie, for having the guts to come on and do this tonight. Because I know it's not been easy for you. But to have the guts to share this with a wider audience who can get something out of it for themselves.
Yeah, my thought was when I first suggested it that I wanted to inspire and empower other people. Yeah. And if people, I know when the blog, so Victor not only put it on my website, he asked my permission to put it on Facebook. And for months afterwards, Jack, I was getting men and women who were going, oh my God, just from reading that, I know what I need to do now to keep myself safe. So I know that although it is brave, it is what I do. I'm a true speaker and a light worker, Jack, like you. Well, I could no more keep quiet about helping people and inspiring and empowering them than, well, I just couldn't do it. It's not me, is it? So thank you. I really appreciate it, Jack.
I just want to
and
say,
I appreciate your honesty as well, because it's difficult for us to have to share stuff that isn't happy and isn't.
I just want to say that Annie is prepared to help other people in a similar situation from her own experience. So if you want to contact Annie at her Heaven Sent Bliss clinic in Stafford, I'll put her contact details down below.
Oh, thank you, lovely Jack. And Andrew, You've been very quiet, my lovely, but I've got 2 books. It wouldn't be me if there was no show or tell. So this is Brené Brown. I love Brené Brown. So it's Braving the Wilderness, the quest for true belonging, and the courage to stand alone. And I can't tell you how much she helped me. So Brené Brown, Braving the Wilderness, the quest for true belonging, and the courage to stand alone.
Amazing
and then
speaker.
She's beautiful, isn't she?
So perceptive, so deeply perceptive.
And she makes me laugh because she's really honest about when she does things that weren't particularly helpful as well, doesn't she?
Yeah.
And then I've mentioned this book before, Doreen Virtue, Assertiveness for Earth Angels, How to Be Loving Instead of Too Nice. Don't know why somebody thought I needed that book. After the fact, obviously. But yeah, this is really helpful stuff. Enjoy life instead of people pleasing. So,
and the links will be below.
The links will most definitely be below in the show notes on the YouTube version of this show.
Thank you. So lovely, Andrew. Have you got anything to say? Because you usually.
I'm in tears, you know, as I hear your story or anybody else's story, and as the kind of people the 3 of us are, people do that. They share with us. They know that they can trust us. They know that we will be compassionate and kind, and that we won't be prescriptive. We won't try and tell them how to deal with anything in their lives. We'll point them in the right direction, and then it's up to them to decide what to do with that information. So I've been very blessed again tonight by hearing what is a remarkable story, because, like you said, this is 8 years ago tonight when this happened, isn't it?
Yeah.
8 years ago tonight. And in those 8 years, you've created a beautiful home, a wonderful business, a lovely garden, and an amazing person that was always on the inside has come out.
Yeah.
And this is just, it's the oyster. We were talking about that, weren't we, in Glastonbury?
Yeah.
The oyster. It's a little bit of grit, this little bit of sand that really annoys the noisy oyster. Do you remember me saying that? What a noisy oyster. What noise a noisy oyster is it? No, it's a noisy noisy tongue tie. But
without that, you couldn't make the pearl. You're right.
Yeah, but the incomparable pain and hurt and everything that went wrong and should never happen to anyone, it isn't there to mock you. It's not there to annoy you and to upset you and to subjugate you. It's there to make you strong, and it's there to make you come out of your shell, literally, you know, and show to the world, the show and tell. Here's the pearl. Look at this beautiful person, this beautiful surroundings that this person's created, this business that she's done. I mean, everything is so well deserved in everyone who's come through a difficult situation. Jack shared as well. The things that we've experienced, we don't necessarily want to share them publicly, but we know that this is true, don't we? That when we've gone through pain, that is when we actually become a bigger person, you know, a more helpful person. If you're an empath and you want to help people, the best training ground you can have, it's pain, discomfort.
Wearing the t-shirt.
Being at the behest of these people with these personality disorders. That's the way, unfortunately, that we have to go. And you've done it with such grace, elegance, integrity. It's just a wonderful story. And I want to applaud, but it just doesn't seem appropriate. But I can't give you a hug because I'm not with you. But thank you for
Have to
sharing.
send me a virtual hug, darling.
I'll send you lots of them. Yeah. So just thank you for sharing this, because this is now a matter of public record, and it will no doubt help many people. And I'd like to say to people who watch this afterwards, this is the truth of this person's life. I've met with Annie, and Jack has as well. This isn't a story that's made up for television. This is a real life that you've heard about tonight, and it is possible to be the phoenix from the ashes.
Oh, absolutely. I'm definitely a phoenix goddess, aren't I?
And Annie is that very self-same thing, and you've been privileged to hear the story. If you've sat through till the end, I'm going to shut up now. Okay,
thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Andrew, and thank you so much, Annie, for sharing that with us tonight. Because I know how hard that. I know how hard that.
Thank you, darling. And you as well, Jack.
So until next week, we'll see you all again. If you're new to this channel, please do like, share, and subscribe.
Yep.
And we're here every Monday, or sometimes Tuesday, or sometimes Wednesday, but normally on a Monday.
It is normally on a Monday. And we got to sing our song, Jack, tonight. All the way.
And we got to sing our song, yeah.
Thank you,
Namaste.
lovely. Namaste.